This is the second part of a selection of readings from the novelisation of Richard Attenborough's film Shadowlands, written by Leonore Fleischer, based on the true story of the relationship between C.S. Lewis and Joy Gresham. In February 1954, C.S. Lewis sees his student Peter Whistler stealing a book from an Oxford bookshop. He confronts Whistler in his rooms at Magdalen College, where Whistler tells him about how he sometimes reads all night and how his father, a village schoolteacher, once told him, "We read to know we are not alone." "Would it help if I made you a small loan?" he asked quietly. "I expect it would if I wanted to be helped." Whistler spoke dismissively, but just as quietly. "I see. Well, goodbye." Lewis's hand dropped to his side. He'd been rebuffed. His help was not wanted here. There seemed to be nothing more to say. At least now he understood the boy better, and had felt, for the first time, some understanding of his tortured rebelliousness. Whistler, the fallen angel. No doubt his struggle on earth would be a difficult one. Several months later, Jack Lewis has now married Joy Gresham in secret, but following an argument with her at the post-graduation party, his writing has begun to suffer. For the first time in his life, C.S. Lewis found that his work was affected by his personal feelings. He found it almost impossible to concentrate in his study at the kilns. His house seemed to be haunted by joy. He wrote, and he crossed out what he wrote. He groped for words, and thoughts eluded him, ideas flashing through his mind and darting out again as the memory of Joy Gresham's face took their place. So he gathered up his notes and papers and moved his labours to the Radcliffe Camera, the library he most favoured of all in Oxford. It was here that Lewis looked up from his desk one day to see Peter Whistler across the library, returning a large stack of books to the librarian. The sight of the student reminded Jack Lewis that it had been a long time since he'd last seen Whistler. A prickling of conscience took Lewis back to the student's rooms that afternoon. He found Whistler packing up his few belongings. The room was virtually bare of possessions. "Are you off for the holidays?" "No," said Whistler shortly. "I'm not coming back. I'm just going." "Going? Going where?" "London." "Why? Is it money?" Something could be, should be done for this student. Whistler's was an incisive mind that deserved encouragement. Not really. Peter Whistler wasn't giving an inch. Whatever his reasons were for interrupting his education and turning his back on an Oxford degree, he was keeping them to himself. "One more year and you'd have your degree," protested Lewis, to whom this act was unthinkable. "Then what? Teach, like you?" Whistler made the word teach sound like an expletive. He barely masked his contempt for Lewis and his precious status as a fellow and an Oxford don, and even for Oxford itself. Lewis felt defeated suddenly, assaulted on all sides. "I wonder what it is that everyone wants from me," he said, not realizing that he was saying it aloud. "That's the first question I've ever heard you ask that sounds like you don't know the answer," said Whistler. It was the same charge Joy had made, put into different words, that C.S. Lewis played it safe and dealt only in matters he could handle easily, without any threat to himself. "Is that good?" demanded Lewis. "Is that what you want? Ignorance? Confusion?" "I don't think I see my way ahead quite as clearly as you do," Whistler said quietly. He's being kind, thought Lewis with a flicker of surprise. What he really means is that he doesn't want my help because it's the wrong kind of help. Not what he needs, only what I choose to give. He's right. "Shadows," Jack said suddenly, half to himself. "What?" Jack Lewis shook his head and sighed. "One of my stories," he explained softly. "We live in the Shadowlands. the sun shining somewhere else, round a bend in the road, over the brow of a hill.